Hi, welcome to the Oliver Fetter YouTube channel. Today, I'm trying to figure out what's up with my TDI. Specifically, it runs, it drives, all of that's fine. It doesn't soot yet, and the point is not to make it soot, but the point is that it's very, very short on fueling, and we're never gonna make big horsepower or even go fast remotely without way more fuel getting to places. So, kind of step zero in my problem-solving approach to this is that I switched some things around on this pump between the 1.6 and installing it on the 1.9. We have the same 11mm head, we have the same linkage, the same index on our throttle lever, and we have slightly different timing springs, but and we have a different return valve. So, kind of first and foremost, the thing I want to look at and figure out is, do we have sufficient case pressure with this delivery valve or with my previous restrictor? Which one should I use? For those who don't know, this right here and inside of this is your delivery valve, and the way VE pumps modulate their pressure is between two different valves. So the first one's actually right over here. I'm pointing to like the tamper-proof kind of top that's near the front of the pump. That is your pressure regulator, and it basically is spring regulated, and at a certain internal case pressure it releases fuel back, or it releases fuel out of the high pressure circuit of the pump. And then here's your return valve and or restrictor. On older pumps, this is a restrictor in the sense that it's literally just a small hole. There's no moving parts. And this thing right here is a return valve, and I think it has a check ball that cracks around, it's supposed to crack around like 15 psi or so, or maybe it's way more than that. I actually have no idea what pressure it cracks at. At any rate, it's different in the fact that it actually holds fuel pressure in here until it hits a certain point and then it opens, as opposed to the restrictor, which actively bleeds fuel pressure all the time. Neither here nor there. I actually have no opinion on which is better yet. That's why we have this. This is a fuel pressure gauge that is slotted into a 1/8 NPT port that's slotted into a M12 by 1.5 just extender, such a thing. I'm pretty sure this is the right thread size to go right in here. The idea being that we're actually just adding this in as a spacer, and so the restrictor or whatever will come after this, and that way we're actually checking internal pump pressure as opposed to checking like post return valve pressure. Just a quick word on pump pressures in general. A lot of people, you'll hear kind of two different sides to pump pressure, and people will say, oh, you can't run more than 15 psi or you'll blow out your seal, or 20 psi. And when they say that, they're referring to your, I don't want to call it case pressure because that's the other thing, but they're referring to like your fuel line feed pressure. If you feed in like 100 psi of fuel pressure, you will blow out the seal that's right next to the pulley. Okay, now completely different, that fuel goes in and hits your vane pump, and the vane pump itself should be taking it up to the neighborhood of 50 to about 125 psi. And that pressure isn't just everywhere inside the pump body, it's specifically in the high pressure circuit between the vane pump, the fuel pressure regulator, and your pump head. It's delivering that pressure specifically to the pump head. It's not just everywhere in your case. Not everything's at 125 psi. Okay. I would tend to call that fuel delivery pressure and call the other thing case pressure, but I'm pretty sure colloquial term for the 125 psi stat is case pressure. So I'm curious what it is, because my theory is that we're not seeing as much fuel because it's low. If you have too low of a case pressure, you don't get a whole lot of fuel injected. And I feel like this pump was previously making my 1.6 roll coal all the time. This is a slightly bigger motor, but I find it weird that we're now getting drastically less fuel. Okay, well this isn't really cooperating in terms of trying to get it at this very specific angle it needs to be at. It's just a little bit too close to a few too many things. If I maybe got just like a spacer body, I could put it out here, because the thought was it'd be nice to have the gauge just sitting like about here so you could, you know, check it. Anyways, we're gonna have to get a little more silly than that. And fortunately I have some extra gauge wiring, and so I'll be able to run a line to it and put that gauge just slightly further somewhere else. Okay, I have it rigged up. For context, we're looking at the back side of the pump. This is my spacer, that's my fuel pressure T, and this is the fuel pressure regulator, which is doing its thing. And you know, right here is my return line. So all I did was remote mount that pressure line over to here. Now this gauge technically only goes up to 100. You might want a gauge that goes to 150, but I doubt it's going to be that high. So now, very exciting, we get to turn it on and see what it does. Okay, so as expected, we're making 20 pounds of case pressure, which is garbage at idle. Okay, so that's actually exactly the same. Exactly the same, which is unfortunate. I thought I was onto something there. So there you go. TDI and 1.6 restrictors give you the exact same pressure. Which may have a lot to do with this valve. What's interesting is every pump is valved uniquely. And so the only way to like try different valves and get different results is just to try a bunch of different valves and see if you get different results. Though the fact that we just tried the 1.6 restrictor and now I've ruled out that that has any effect on how much fuel we're getting makes me feel better, because now I can focus on other things. Right, so the next thing on my bucket list to play with is the levers. And that is because you can index your throttle differently and get different results. Results. And I kind of hate taking this off because these springs are a real pain to put back on, but here we go. So you can see my throttle mark is kind of like this, and then there's these other 3 tick marks on here. So I'm going to try adjusting this to a few different positions and see if we get any better results. Alright, so for now I just removed the top spring. These are honestly such a pain to put on. Horrible. But in the meantime, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because I'm just gonna hold it. There's right now this free play, but I'm gonna hold it this way, and we still have our bail link in case something goes wrong. Something like that. If we back off our fuel screw, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. The thing here that I'm working on, that we're trying to balance, is getting a lot of lever throw with having a lot of fuel screw adjustment. And you can't really have both. You get both, but only up to a point. So It does you no good to go overboard on one or the other. Alright, I would generally say that was worse. And what I did was I moved the lever stack counterclockwise with respect to the input shaft. Okay, now by contrast, I moved the levers clockwise relative to the governor linkage, and so now we should have a much lower idle, slash it may not even run when I try to turn it on, but here we go. Yeah, so it won't even start. Case in point. Sounds good for it, doesn't it, when you grind the starter around a bunch? Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so you can see that that was junk too, and actually where I had it was probably right on the money, which sucks because now it's apart. But this amount of play is because now we're too loose, so this does absolutely nothing. And then when you hit the gas, also nothing happens. Because again, there's too much slack now in the system, so there's a dead band, and then when you do hit the gas, nothing happens. And then when you run your fuel screw in so far to get it to idle, and with this so far down, as soon as you do hit the gas, the collar is so far over the spill ports that you end up basically just going into weird rev hang that you can't actually control. No good. So there is one other position to try, which is a highly suspect position at best. And to illustrate one more sketchy thing, I've now fully removed the throttle stack. Oh, that might be what I want right there. We'll see. I've now fully removed the throttle stack altogether to give us an unreasonable range of motion with some vice grips. So, fuel screw is back to where it about was the previous test, and this is probably going to be a little sketchy. Okay, it doesn't even start. Still doesn't start. So right now the line's about here. Line was about there, and then we have all this extra I didn't even get to. Let's revisit what angle it likes to idle at, slash, let's tune. So I have where I want it, with my fuel screw where I want it. Now, should be able to throw the lever stack back on there, haha. Throw. And leave this where it is. Okay, so now we check the handiwork, or lack thereof. Should be darn close to what I just had it, but a little bit low for idle. Kind of what we learned from this is that there's only really one position in which you get the best use of your throttle index, and if you do it wrong, your pump will act really weird. These restrictors put out about the same amount of fuel pressure, and now if this doesn't drive terribly fast still, which it probably won't, then my next course of action is that the lever that pulls your governor spring is pretty short in the 1.6 pumps, so I may need to go in here, take this top half off, and modify a lever to be longer, so as we're doing this, we're actually getting more effect on the collar. Thanks so much for watching. Cheers.